I'm Ryan Yamamoto. This is The Minute. Investigators are looking into the cause of a lumberyard fire in Oakland and burned for hours last night at the Economy Lumber Warehouse. This is on High Street near 880. Neighbors were told to close their doors and windows because of concerns over air quality. No injuries reported. Workers of Alcatraz Island Ferry are on strike. It comes after a year-and-a-half negotiations. Almost 100 unionized ferry workers are fighting for better pay and workplace benefits. Alcatraz City Cruises condemned the strike and said operations will continue without the striking workers. And Memorial Day events around the Bay Area today honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice. The city of San Francisco will honor the fallen with a free presentation in the Presidio. And Mill Valley will hold its annual parade featuring local businesses and community groups. The Bay Area's only primetime newscast at 8 and 9 p.m. on the all-new Pix Plus 44 Cable 12.
It's Memorial Day here in the Bay Area with 80s expected for us as we head into this afternoon all throughout our inland areas. 50s and 60s along the coast and the bay. Now it's going to stay a little bit cloudier along our coastline heading into this afternoon. A little bit gustier winds too along our coast. We can see wind gusts anywhere up to around 20 to 30 miles per hour. Close to areas like San Francisco all the way up into Bodega Bay heading into the evening hours tonight. It is going to be a lot lighter for our inland areas. But hey, speaking of that, let's take a quick look at some of our inland areas. Starting with San Francisco, actually, we have a nice warm up as we head into this week's forecast. Once we head a lot more inland, closer to Concord or even down into the Santa Clara Valley, that's where we see that warm up even more noticeable. Our inland areas expected to get close to the 90s later this week, and we'll have more on that in just a bit. But let's take it a step back and let's take a look at today. We already know that it's going to be a little bit breezier along our coastline, giving us some cooler temperatures into this afternoon. For example, Half Moon Bay sitting in the 50s. We have 50s up into San Francisco this afternoon and all the way up into Napa and Sonoma. 70s in the forecast for us. The 80s are all the way off into Antioch. We're seeing upper 70s near Livermore. A similar trend down into the Santa Clara Valley. We did wake up this morning with that May gray, but lasting into this afternoon, we'll start to see sunnier skies, especially in those inland areas. And here's that warm up I was talking about. What's happening is high pressure is moving its way in. That's going to give us upper 80s right around the corner as we head into our Thursday forecast. And then we slowly start to average out heading into this weekend. We are still not close to the first day of summer, less than a month away, but it's still worth noting we have some summer-like weather as we head into this week's forecast. 70s right around the corner from Wednesday into Thursday, lasting into Friday for areas like Oakland and San Francisco. We'll see a flirting setup of upper 60s and lower 70s into early next week with some partly cloudy skies along the bay.
Well, in Oakland, neighbors and business owners in one neighborhood say a growing homeless encampment is creating safety concerns. It's not the first we're hearing about residents being fed up with trash and clutter where they live. Authorities say illegal dumping costs the city tens of millions of dollars each year. Earlier this month, a statewide conference was held in Oakland focusing on ways to limit the problem. Experts gave presentations focusing on a so-called 3 E's strategy, which includes education, eradication, and enforcement. And just last year, the city cleared out its largest homeless encampment on Wood Street. This was under the MacArthur Maze. It was about a mile long, and firefighters called the encampment a hazard. They put out several fires there and said the situation was just becoming more dangerous. The city eventually closed the camp to make way for the construction of more affordable housing and help relocate the people who lived there. Now in the city's Fruitvale neighborhood, people say the trash, abandoned cars, and other debris are just too much to deal with, and they can no longer walk there. The area in question is on East 8th Street between Fruitvale and 34th Avenues. It began with a single RV parked on the sidewalk and has grown since. Neighbors told our Da Lin the sidewalk is now blocked off, and there was recently an incident involving an axe.
Neighbors say they can no longer use the sidewalk on East 8th Street near Fruitvale Avenue. A car is parked on the sidewalk. There's also a bike and a bunch of other stuff. They walk into the street to get in and out of their homes.
The kids who are walking to school have to get off the sidewalk because they can't go through. It's the only sidewalk since there isn't one on the other side.
Through a translator, Hector Ugo worries a car could hit his 2 little girls. Neighbors and business owners say it started out with one RV a few months ago, but it got bigger. A second RV and a couple of cars have since camped out on East 8th Street. They worry it could turn into East 9th Street, which is filled with RVs and people living in cars.
And walking through there, it's a death trap. And when it starts going dark, Forget about it. There's no light there. It makes it even more dangerous.
Neighbors say this is the other route if families don't want to walk into the street, but the alleyway is filled with trash.
I think on Thursday, we went past that tipping point.
Business owner Everardo Rodriguez says on Thursday, someone vandalized a stolen or abandoned car on the street. Cell phone footage also showed a person using a rock to break the driver's side window. A short time later, Everardo says a homeless man walked out with what appeared to be an axe in his right hand to confront someone.
I'm beyond frustrated. I'm beyond disappointed. I'm beyond angry.
They say they called the city multiple times, but no one has cleared the encampment.
It goes beyond atrocious. It's deliberate. How can the city not act?
I asked the RV dwellers why block the sidewalk. One man says he'll tell his uncle to clean it up.
I'll make sure that gets cleared up, you know. But no, you're right, absolutely. Kids need to walk by for their safety.
The man says the RV dwellers don't want to cause problems, but they have nowhere to go.
It's not the homeless people bringing the trash, destroying these businesses, abandoning all these cars.
Councilman Noel Gallo met with Everardo about the concerns. He says the city is working to clear the RVs on both East 8th and 9th Streets.
That's on the clear list. They got to go. This guy that started, you know, he's from Missouri, Canada, all over the country coming into Oakland because we're allowing that behavior to happen. They shouldn't be on that street. There should not be because it's illegal to block the sidewalk.
Everardo and the neighbors hope the city will act fast.
This cannot continue because it puts our life in jeopardy.
A lot of neighbors tell me they would like to move, but they've lived here for a long time, and they say they simply cannot afford to leave. So now they're waiting for the city to do something about this.
And one of the Bay Area's most iconic landmarks turns 87 years old today. Happy birthday to the Golden Gate Bridge. Opened up to the public on Saturday, May 27th, 1937. More than 4,000 men built the 1.7-mile span over more than 4 years, including putting 600,000 rivets into each tower. 200,000 pedestrians crossed the span on opening day. Since then, it's become an icon, not only out of the Bay Area, but the entire country. It was the last thing U.S. soldiers saw before being shipped off to the Pacific during World War II, and the site of countless protests and celebrations over 8+ decades it's been open. A campaign brochure in 1930 promised that tolls on the proposed bridge would only be 25 cents by 1960 and that would cost nothing to cross the span by 1970. Well, today those costs are almost $10. And today on this Memorial Day, the Bay Area is honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice. San Francisco saluted the heroes of the Battle of Guadalupe Canal yesterday, remembering the sacrifice made by the crews of the city's namesake ship, the USS San Francisco. Our John Ramos reports from the remains of the ship where 80 years later, history is still being written.
The bagpipes once again led the nation's colors to the memorial for the USS San Francisco, its torn bridge wings on display with holes from the shelling it took in the brutal Battle of Guadalcanal. It was November 14, 1942, and a Japanese armada was heading to bombard a group of Marines trying to hold on to an important airbase.
And the USS San Francisco, in lead of a group, steamed into the middle in what was nothing other than a suicide run. But they knew they had to do it in order to save the Marines. And that's the story where we remember.
But within that were other stories as well, like that of Chief Warrant Officer Paul McKinley. He flew as a backseater in an amphibious two-wing scout plane aboard the ship. He joined the Navy in 1937 and was just about to get out of the service when Pearl Harbor was attacked.
And so he was not released out of his 4-year contract and served the next 4 years on an extended tour of duty, is what they called it.
McKinley's family was at the ceremony offering a book about his wartime experiences. He was on the USS San Francisco when it emerged undamaged from the Pearl Harbor attacks and then seemed to move from one major battle to another.
Well, Midway, they were on their way to Midway, and they found out that that had gone down how it had, and so they reverted course and did not go to Midway. So he did escape that one, but then that was just preceding Guadalcanal, so yeah.
He kind of saw it all when
he was, yeah, he was out there.
McKinley's scout plane had been removed from the ship prior to the bloody battle that killed 103 men, including her captain and admiral. but the plane was used afterwards to track the crippled Japanese ships and rescue American sailors from the sea. Still, most of it was never talked about until McKinley's family convinced him to put his memories down on paper before his death in 1996.
And I don't think that the bravery and the heroism of these men and women can accurately be understood without hearing it from their own words. It changed the war, you know, what the people on, especially the USS San Francisco, were able to do. And that, you know, just has changed the outcome of our country. And I think we lose that because we're so in the present, here and now. And yeah, it is very important to remember what happened.
So now a new chapter has been added to the story of the USS San Francisco, and it will be up to the generations that follow to decide what will be remembered and what will fade into the thin air of history.
And the USS San Francisco became one of the most decorated ships of World War II, earning 17 battle stars and a Presidential Unit Citation. For more information on the tributes and Memorial Day events in our communities all over the Bay Area, you can just head to our website at kpix.com. Still ahead on CBS News Bay Area, for years, people in Richmond have been wondering what's going to happen to the empty Hilltop Mall. Now they just got an update on the vision to turn it around, but will the red tape get in the way? Plus, it is the second biggest day of their high school careers, the ceremony in the East Bay, where students get to do, well, a little bragging. And sudden and intense nightmares could signal the onset of chronic illness. Research could give us a clue as to why.
Nice and warm for some of our inland areas and cooler and breezier along our coastline. Heading into the afternoon hours today, we'll hit the 50s along our coast, 60s close to San Francisco, 80s all the way off near Antioch. But for the rest of us, take a look at this. Daytime highs are pretty much sitting in the 70s from Petaluma up into Santa Rosa. We'll see some gustier conditions along the coastline today. Lighter winds expected in our inland areas. And for many of our inland areas, we'll also see some 70s trickled in there from Fremont over into Livermore. A nice warm-up is expected for us this week. But for now, we're still holding on tight to the 70s down into the Santa Clara Valley too.
Well, there once was a time when Richmond's Hilltop Mall would have been a crowded place on a holiday weekend. I used to hang out there. And of course, times have changed and the mall has been sitting empty since 2021. But neighbors that have been hoping to see it become something more just got a long-awaited update on the new vision for the property. Last week, the city and the site's owner gave the community a glimpse at plans to transform the area around the mall into a mixed-use neighborhood between Interstate 80 and San Pablo Avenue. Our Wilson Walker got a look at where things stand and found out there's still some hurdles to get past.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a vacant mall, and it's been this way for decades, and people are really tired of seeing it this way.
Circling the mall that has long been circling the drain, Arlo Rentila and Bobin Kotri, they head the two local neighborhood councils in the Hilltop area, and they both have plenty of ideas on what they would like to see here.
We really need something here that we can go shop, dine, and a little bit of housing is needed as well, because if housing comes here, then that'll sort of drive the growth for retail, entertainment, and things of that nature.
Kotri's wish list is starting to age a little bit. He first told us about his hopes for this site when mega developer Prologis bought the 77 acres back in April of 2021.
But we've had several delays, one after another.
I think that's something that we will be working on, right? Like, what is the proper retail mix? What are the proper retail tenants to bring in that can serve Richmond residents? I mean, I think
with neighbors wondering what is going on with the project, Prologis and their developer partners hosted a town hall to provide an update on the planning, but there are no real plans yet. The city is still drawing up their goals for this area. Prologis is said to be waiting on that. And now, a new bit of intrigue.
There is a new wrinkle to the plan, which is going to put it on hold, and we're hoping that the city will unveil that wrinkle.
The city did not return our calls, and Rentila says he is not free to discuss the wrinkle, but it is said to be a potential job-creating element for the project, which is good, but another delay, he says, could be bad.
Sometimes those delays cost the developer, and the developer just raises their hands up and says, hey, we have to move on. And so we're concerned about that as well.
Now, despite the delays, these two leaders are still hopeful.
Prologis has listened to us. We're optimistic that something good is going to happen.
They would just like to see things moving a little faster.
And we really want the city to get through this process as soon as they can. This is not a 10, 15, 20-year plan. We want a development here within the next 5 years.
Another outstanding question is the future of Walmart, which has a long-term lease here. Does Walmart somehow get incorporated into future plans? What about this mystery component that we will presumably learn more about? A lot of moving parts to something this big, but as you heard, neighbors getting a little impatient, hoping to see something get moving before things maybe get a little too complicated and drag on a little too long.
And the developer's proposal includes up to 7,500 units of housing. There have been some initial concern the owner would try to turn the area into a distribution hub with warehouses, but it seems that they listened to community feedback and are focusing on residential and retail. Hilltop isn't the only Bay Area mall in line for a big makeover. Earlier this month, San Francisco's Planning Commission gave the green light to transform Stonestown Galleria. The project is expected to add 3,500 homes in the town square with parks, retail, and restaurants. Unlike Hilltop Mall, Stonestown has managed to fill large department stores like Macy's and Nordstrom. And it was an exciting day for students at one Oakland high school. They aren't graduating for another little under 2 weeks, but they're already celebrating a proud achievement. Our Itai Had gives us a look at this special ceremony.
Few things can match the anticipation of a commencement ceremony, but here at Cristo Rey de la Salle High School in Oakland, graduation might actually be the second most exciting day of the year.
As a first-generation student, this means a lot to me. It's basically all of my sacrifices and my family's sacrifices kind of combined in one day.
Ever since she was a little girl, Marisol Garibaldi dreamed of going to college. Today, she'll get to announce where she'll be headed during her school's so-called College Reveal Day.
I'm excited to just be able to brag a little bit about where I'm going.
I'm committed to UCSD. I'll be attending Cal State East Bay. I'll be going to San Francisco State University.
Also known as Declaration Day.
Hello, my name is Mario. I'm going to go to the University of San Francisco, and I'm going to be majoring in computer science.
These ceremonies are becoming increasingly popular in recent years. But what makes this one different from any other is the fact that for the third year in a row, every single senior here has been accepted to a four-year university. And if that's not impressive enough, all of them come from low-income families where few of their parents had any opportunity for higher education.
It's a tradition that Cristo Rey has done for the past 3 years.
Paola Dueñas is the guidance counselor. She says the reason the school has been so successful is that every student has a team of academic advisors that work with them one-on-one and are available to them for 6 years after graduation.
Every student deserves an opportunity, and they're all college bound.
The school has a unique approach that gives students both classroom and real-world experience through a work program that also offsets tuition.
We have wonderful corporate partners that mentor them in a job location doing work over the course of 4 years.
As for Marisol, she's not just going to any college. She's headed to...
Hi everyone, I'll be majoring in English and I've committed to UC Berkeley.
Being accepted to a top-tier university. Clearly a class act with a high degree of difficulty.
And according to Public Policy Institute, about 62% of high school graduates enroll in college across California. So quite the achievement for Cristo Rey's class of 2024. They're graduating on June 7th. Still ahead, new research into chronic conditions triggering vivid and frequent nightmares. Stanford doctor joins us to explain a possible connection. And a reminder, you can stream CBS News Bay Area wherever, whenever. Catch all of our live newscasts plus news and weather updates throughout the day. Find us on the free CBS News app or on Pluto TV.
We have cool weather to start this week. It's Memorial Day here in the Bay Area, and we're expecting 50s as we head into this afternoon near San Francisco. 50s along our coast with some gustier conditions lasting into this afternoon. We could see wind speeds anywhere up to around 20 to 30 miles per hour at times, closer to dinner time tonight. Now, as we head off into the East Bay, it's a lot warmer for us. We're expecting 80s today just near Antioch. Upper 70s pretty much anywhere from the North Bay down into the East Bay, though, with a similar trend down into the Santa Clara Valley throughout this afternoon. 70s are in the forecast for now. But look at this. In the next 7 days, we have a really big warm up. Those 70s are going to be replaced with upper 80s close to the 90s as we head all the way into our Thursday forecast. That's just our inland areas. We'll also notice that warm up for our friends along the bay, just not nearly as warm. We're going to see 60s today and tomorrow, 70s returning closer to Oakland and San Francisco from Wednesday into Friday. And then we'll flirt back and forth with 60s and 70s heading into early next week with some partly cloudy skies along the bay shoreline.
Well, in San Francisco, neighbors around Alamo Square are banding together after a fire gutted the home of a well-known dog walker. Terry Williams previously made headlines as the target of racist threats, and our Dodlin shows us how the community is stepping up to help him through these tough times.
This is what a village looks like, filled with hugs, donations, and messages of support.
We will all continue to love and support you and your family.
Love and support from the mission, thinking of you.
I'm so happy to see how many of your neighbors love you. I hope you feel the support today.
We support you as neighbors, and we love you, Terry.
Terry Williams says he's overwhelmed by the amount of love.
It humbles me that so many people showed up. So, I'm very proud and grateful, really grateful.
Roughly 100 people, friends, neighbors, even strangers, attended the barbecue fundraiser for Terry and his family Sunday evening. A fire destroyed their family home on Tuesday. Terry had reported to San Francisco police about a month before the fire. His family received threatening and racist packages, including a doll depicting a black person with a noose around its neck. Firefighters are still investigating the cause of the fire. Police say at this time there's no connection between the fire and the racist packages.
I pray to God is not. I hope nobody that had that much malice in their heart. I said that before, but I just pray to God no one's that crazy.
Terry's mom and dad suffered from injuries in the fire. Terry says they're out of the hospital and doing better. The family is now staying at a hotel. Terry says his dad bought the house near Alamo Square more than 5 decades ago in the early 70s.
We're not leaving. We're not leaving. My dad already said we're going to rebuild right here. We're not going. My dad always say he bought the house and going to die in the house with my mom. So that's the plan. So
Letitia Williams Humphrey is Terry's sister. She was raised in the house, and it breaks her heart to see it boarded up.
I don't have a home. I have a house that I live in, but this is what I called home. Where my parents were, it's always home.
Supporters say while they lost their home, they still have the neighborhood.
May compassion and equity overcome hate, jealousy, and racism.
We love you. Feel more strong.
We are standing with you and are keeping your family in our thoughts. Your new neighbor, Sarah.
The Williams family says this kind of support shows them love trumps hate.
I want to say thanks for everybody who donated to help my family. Thank you. It gives me hope. So that everything's going to be all right.
And the rebuilding process will likely take months. Terry says he's talking to the city to see what kind of housing option may be available to his family. Coming up in our next half hour in CBS News Bay Area, how a personal tragedy inspired a local team to help other young people find mental health resources using artificial intelligence. Ryan Yamamoto. This is the Minute. Crews fighting flames for hours at a lumber yard. This is in Oakland. That fire started last night at the Economy Lumber Warehouse on High Street near 880. People nearby were told to close their homes and doors and windows because of concerns over air quality. No injuries were reported. No word yet on the cause. In San Francisco, firefighters rescued a dog that fell off a cliff. They believe the dog named Cushy Pup was being chased by raccoons last night on Turner Terrace in Potrero Hill. Well, firefighters used a rope to rescue him. They say he's okay. He's been reunited with his human. The main branch of Oakland Library will be closed until November. The library says they'll be going through some major upgrades, including a new roof and upgraded electrical system, and new floors and new lighting. It will be funded with a $4.2 million state grant and matching money from the city. I'm Ryan Yamamoto. This is The Minute.
It's Memorial Day here in the Bay Area with 80s expected for us as we head into this afternoon all throughout our inland areas, 50s and 60s along the coast and the bay. Now it's going to stay a little bit cloudier along our coastline heading into this afternoon. A little bit gustier winds too along our coast. We can see wind gusts anywhere up to around 20 to 30 miles per hour close to areas like San Francisco all the way up into Bodega Bay heading into the evening hours tonight. It is going to be a lot lighter for our inland areas, but hey, speaking of that, let's take a quick look at some of our inland areas. Starting with San Francisco, actually, we have a nice warm up as we head into this week's forecast. Once we head a lot more inland, closer to Concord or even down into the Santa Clara Valley, that's where we see that warm up even more noticeable. Our inland areas expected to get close to the 90s later this week, and we'll have more on that in just a bit, but let's take it a step back and let's take a look at today. We already know that it's going to be a little bit breezier along our coastline, giving us some cooler temperatures into this afternoon. For example, Half Moon Bay sitting in the 50s. We have 50s up into San Francisco this afternoon and all the way up into Napa and Sonoma, 70s in the forecast for us. The 80s are all the way off into Antioch. We're seeing upper 70s near Livermore, a similar trend down into the Santa Clara Valley. We did wake up this morning with that May gray, but lasting into this afternoon, we'll start to see sunnier skies, especially in those inland areas. And here's that warm up I was talking about. What's happening is high pressure is moving its way in. That's going to give us upper 80s right around the corner as we head into our Thursday forecast. And then we slowly start to average out heading into this weekend. We are still not close to the first day of summer, less than a month away, but it's still worth noting we have some summer-like weather as we head into this week's forecast. 70s right around the corner from Wednesday into Thursday, lasting into Friday for areas like Oakland and San Francisco. We'll see a flirting setup of upper 60s and lower 70s into early next week with some partly cloudy skies along the bay.
Well, nightmares could be a sign of something more serious. A new study shows those bad dreams could be an early sign of chronic illness. The study published in the Journal of E-Clinical Medicine shows it may be a sign of a disease like lupus or other autoimmune diseases. Well, Dr. Rafael Pelayo from Stanford Sleep Disorders Clinic joins us now. So, Doctor, first, can you tell us how certain chronic conditions could trigger more vivid and frequent nightmares?
Good morning. Yes. Pretty much any chronic medical condition will be made worse by not sleeping well. So we know that people, for example, with migraine headaches or with seizures or with depression, all have exacerbations of worsening of those conditions when they don't get enough sleep. That seems kind of an obvious thing to do. But sleep is really how the brain takes care of itself. And our best form of self-care is through our sleep. And very few things will make you feel better than getting a good night's sleep. Probably this morning, people woke up with getting extra sleep and feeling better. So there's definitely this imbalance about how sleep is impacting our overall health. And any chronic disease you have, especially if it's an inflammatory disease, will be made worse by having poor quality sleep. We've seen this in many, many other examples. And this is an important study because it's letting people know that if they happen to have a flare-up of their nightmares, they shouldn't just think of it as something we'll just pass it off. But it actually can be a tip-off that something's going on with their brains, especially if they already suffer from a chronic disease like lupus.
Yeah, and some patients also reported feeling more disoriented when they're awake. What can you tell us about that?
There's some other examples of this happening with people. When we work with children, for example, there's a disease called narcolepsy. And narcolepsy is an autoimmune disease, just like type 1 diabetes is. And it begins in some children with vivid hallucinations. So they're awake and they start seeing things that aren't really there. And the hallucinations can be so vivid that adults will have it and think it's, we'll call 911, for example, because it's such intense, vivid hallucinations they're having. the children, when they have this, sometimes they keep quiet because they're scared. They're going to be told that they're crazy, or they have schizophrenia, or it gets misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. So having fragments of dreams happening when you are awake, which would be these, it's a funny word, hypnagogic hallucinations or hypnopompic hallucinations, can be a sign of flare-up of any neurological disease. And it's important to talk about it because people will keep it quiet because they're scared that they have a mental illness that's brewing and not realizing, in fact, it's a sign of another neurological problem occurring.
That is fascinating. So if you have been having more frequent nightmares lately, do you recommend seeing a doctor?
Sure. I mean, we should be enjoying our sleep. You should wake up feeling refreshed. You should not wake up feeling tired, for example, right? Don't leave restaurants feeling hungry. Don't leave restaurants feeling tired. You should wake up feeling refreshed. So when people have early signs of poor sleep, it shows up. Very sensitive areas are dreaming, because dreams dominate the last third of the night. And typically, when you sleep through your dream, you don't remember them the next day. So having awareness of your dreams, especially if they're unpleasant like nightmares, could be a sign of another medical problem going on. So point it out to your doctor. It could also be medication effects. A lot of medications affect our sleep and affect our dreaming patterns, for example. Antidepressants classically do this.
Is there a difference between dreaming and having a nightmare?
It's the same phenomena, being aware of that imagery in your head. So you can talk about mental imagery as a bigger group.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that your life's reflected on your sleep and your sleep's reflected on your life. So unpleasant situations that you're in, stressful situations, will be manifested in that imagery. There's data on women going through divorce, for example, showing more nightmare patterns as an example of it. So nightmares are unpleasant dreams or anxiety dreams is how we think of them. And that's the best way to describe them. So nightmares are a subtype of dream, but if you have a pleasant dream, you may not remember it. Or if it's a routine dream, you just doesn't have the memory of it. But the emotional impact of a nightmare is what characterizes them. You wake up, you're fearful, heart racing, and that fear goes on, and you're scared to go back to sleep, or you don't want to even think about it. Those are our nightmares. And yes, those can be a sign of another medical thing going on. Sleep apnea, classically, very commonly will have choking dreams and nightmare dreams in our patients of drowning. I've seen that a few times. People tell me that they have nightmare dreams when they have sleep apnea, and it's just beginning.
Well, this is very, very good information. So always, Dr. Rafael Payayo, thank you very much for joining us with Stanford Health. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Good day, everybody.
Well, to San Francisco, a major blow for the Aquarium of the Bay at Pier 39. The facility lost its certification for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. It comes after reports its CEO was pushed out. The organization confirms it has not been meeting standards in a number of areas, including financial stability, staffing, employee morale, and turnover. The Aquarium of the Bay has been a fixture on the waterfront at Pier 39 for nearly 3 decades, and the Chronicle reports it will stay open and operations won't be impacted. Earlier this week, the paper broke the news that the CEO, George Jacob, was asked to resign by the Aquarium's board over concerns about his alleged lavish spending on travel. He denied the claims when we reached him for comment. He said his essential travel was covered by sponsors and kept to a minimum. The Aquarium has until June 13th to appeal the accreditation decision. Former Oakland Police Chief LeRon Armstrong has officially launched his campaign for city council. He says he's the only candidate who understands how to handle city resources.
I worked for the city for 24 years, and so I've known a lot of people for a very long time. I think people know my commitment to Oakland. They know how much I love and care about this city.
He claims he will focus on helping the city rather than playing politics.
I'm really here for people of Oakland, to solve problems for people of Oakland, to come up with solutions to make the city better. I want to live in a city that's thriving. I want to live in a city that's safe. And so no matter who's the mayor or who I have to sit next to, I hope our commitment are the same.
Armstrong was fired last year by Mayor Sheng Tao, who said she lost confidence in the former police chief over how he handled an internal police investigation. But an independent arbiter cleared Armstrong of any wrongdoing. In February, he filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the city. That lawsuit is still pending. Up next, a woman dealing with the tragedy of losing her mom to medical malpractice finds the answer to her pain, as she did by helping to change a 50-year-old California state law.
Day is looking nice and warm for some of our inland areas and cooler and breezier along our coastline. Heading into the afternoon hours today, we'll hit the 50s along our coast, 60s close to San Francisco, 80s all the way off near Antioch. But for the rest of us, take a look at this. Daytime highs are pretty much sitting in the 70s from Petaluma up into Santa Rosa. We'll see some gustier conditions along the coastline today. Lighter winds expected in our inland areas. And for many of our inland areas, we'll also see some 70s trickled in there from Fremont over into Livermore. A nice warm-up is expected for us this week, but for now we're still holding on tight to the 70s down into the Santa Clara Valley too.
Our coverage of AAPI Heritage Month continues today with a tragedy that became a push for change. Nearly 30 years ago, Susan Liu's mom died as a result of a plastic surgery malpractice in San Francisco. Susan dealt with the trauma through performance art and most recently a new book, but the real healing began when she used the tragedy to help change a nearly 50-year-old California law.
Everyone knows the tragedy of the dead, but let's talk about the tragedy of the living.
How someone heals from trauma.
I felt scared.
Can come in many different forms.
Perhaps there was too much shame tied to how she died.
For Susan Liu, she found answers as a performing artist with a one-woman play, and most recently as an author with the release of her memoir, The Manicurist's Daughter.
Seeking the truth was how I would avenge my mother's death.
Her mother, Fong Ha, known by her American name Jennifer, had owned 2 nail salons, a Vietnamese immigrant who had made a life for her family in the Bay Area. But in 1996, while undergoing a tummy tuck and chin implant, she went into a coma and later died of a botched plastic surgery. The doctor had been at the center of multiple complaints, having his license suspended by the Medical Board of California. Where Susan made a trip to the San Francisco doctor's office, where her mom went in but never came out.
Sometimes I look back and I wish I could have prevented her from coming here. I've come to this building so many times looking for answers, and a part of me feels that I found that answer and now I can let it go.
Susan found that answer by turning trauma and tragedy into real change. At the time of her mother's death, there was a $250,000 cap set in 1975 in the state of California on the amount of money that injured patients and their families could recoup for pain, suffering, or even death.
Plastic surgery is a perfect example of this.
Carmen Balber with Consumer Watchdog had been fighting the cap for several decades.
Now, in 1975, $250,000 was actually a reasonable amount of money. Today, that amount is about $50,000 when adjusted for inflation. What that means is no attorney can afford to take a case that has only non-economic damages with that cap being so low.
When I was 11 years old, I lost my mother to medical negligence.
They recruited the help of victims and their family members, including Susan Liu, who testified and told her story to medical boards and lawmakers.
One of the most important ways that an organization like mine can make a change in the law is by telling the stories of families who are impacted.
And in 2022, they won the battle. Governor Gavin Newsom signing California Assembly Bill 35, the Fairness for Injured Patients Act, raising the cap families could recoup for medical negligence from $250,000 up to $1 million.
That's me leaving a legacy for my mother.
A legacy through activism and real change, while healing through performance and her art.
I wanted to know who she was and how I was like her. And most of all, I wanted to know if I could heal from this trauma.
By retelling the story of her mother, not just how she died, but how she continues to live. And Susan and her family did not benefit from the change in the laws. With the doctor who performed the plastic surgery on her mother, he died in 2014. Meanwhile, we're honoring a labor hero and giving long overdue recognition to the role of Filipino Americans in the state's farm worker labor movement. The story moving from the pages of a book to a stage in San Francisco.
Well, Larry the Musical played at the Brava Theater in the Mission District. It told the story of Larry Itilong, who organized Filipino farm workers and joining forces with Cesar Chavez, co-founding the United Farm Workers. Filipinos who fought for workers' rights have only started to get recognition for their contributions.
I think that this is a story for anybody who's an American, just like the Boston Tea Party. We learn about it is absolutely essential to America's identity.
Well, meet the talented artist shining the spotlight on a piece of history far from the classroom. That story coming up at 5 right here on CBS News Bay Area. Well, if you want to see more stories highlighting the Bay Area's AAPI communities, just head to our website at kpix.com. You can also watch our special Roots and Resilience on our YouTube channel. Just search KPIX or CBS News Bay Area. Coming up, using AI to connect young people with mental health resources, how a young teen's tragic loss inspired her to help her peers.
We have cool weather to start this week. It's Memorial Day here in the Bay Area, and we're expecting 50s as we head into this afternoon near San Francisco. 50s along our coast with some gustier conditions lasting into this afternoon. We could see wind speeds anywhere up to around 20 to 30 miles per hour at times, closer to dinner time tonight. Now, as we head off into the East Bay, it's a lot warmer for us. We're expecting 80s today just near Antioch. Upper 70s pretty much anywhere from the North Bay down into the East Bay, though, with a similar trend down into the Santa Clara Valley throughout this afternoon. 70s are in the forecast for now. But look at this. In the next 7 days, we have a really big warm up. Those 70s are going to be replaced with upper 80s, close to the 90s as we head all the way into our Thursday forecast. That's just our inland areas. We'll also notice that warm up for our friends along the bay, just not nearly as warm. We're going to see 60s today and tomorrow, 70s returning closer to Oakland and San Francisco from Wednesday into Friday. And then we'll flirt back and forth with 60s and 70s heading into early next week with some partly cloudy skies along the bay shoreline.
Well, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and a teenager on the peninsula who went through a devastating loss of her own wants to help young people like herself. Alureen Ayub shows us how she's using AI to do it.
She may be young, but her wisdom is timeless. Charlotte Rosario is only 17, but when AI began advancing, she started to dig deeper to explore ways the technology could be beneficial for humanity.
I've always loved to tinker when I was younger, and in the last few years, I've been interested in coding and building various apps and tools. When the AI boom started happening, I wanted to get my hands on some of these, AI models to see what they're capable of.
And in doing that, Charlotte discovered what she is capable of. As one passionate about mental health and wellness, she decided to combine her interests and create an AI tool that helps people find mental health resources more efficiently.
A lot of people don't actually have that much education and awareness around how mental health works. What is mental health? What are services that are available?
It's the kind of awareness Charlotte wishes her own family had growing up. After losing a parent, Charlotte has been on her own journey of healing and hopes to share that healing with others.
My dad actually passed away by suicide when I was just 12 years old. It was actually 1 week before the quarantine started. And I think going through that whole experience of realizing just how much stigma there is around mental health, I've had to put myself in a position where I have tried to heal by helping others. This is the landing page.
Charlotte's tool, entitled Search Mental Health, has partnered with the National Alliance on Mental Illness to expand the platform across California. By simply typing out one's feelings in the search bar, advanced filters provide information for relevant contacts without all the medical jargon. And according to Mark Salazar, the CEO of the Mental Health Association of San Francisco, he believes AI can be an effective approach to encourage people to seek help, but it's only one small step in the process.
If people can develop those tools, those are great. But the caveat should be that these aren't the be-all, end-all resources, and that you can explore other services and supports out there. But that I think using AI as a tool is a great model rather than the solution itself.
As for Charlotte, she just wants to let people know there are solutions.
What's really important is doing things for social good, doing things for the people that we love, the communities that we love.
And it's the love for her father that fuels her path forward.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, you can call or text 988 for the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. And someone is always available to talk 24 hours a day. Well, colorful outfits, bouncing cars, and big crowds took over San Francisco's Mission District for one of the biggest annual festivals in the city. Carnaval San Francisco continues to be a crowd pleaser, bringing together people from many cultures and bringing lots of floats and performances, including a crowd favorite, the lowriders.
I love this. This is what lowriding was really meant for. We love to cruise our cars nice and slow and let people enjoy them.
Well, Pedro Ramirez says lowriders would cause a lot of problems with police, but things aren't as bad nowadays. He says lowriding is just about cruising, not gang activity. And you can see Jose Martinez had a lot of bling there, enjoying his ride in one of those lowriders. Well, if you missed our live coverage yesterday of the Grand Parade, you can still watch it on our YouTube channel. Just search KPIX or CBS News Bay Area. Thanks for streaming CBS News Bay Area. I'm Ryan Yamamoto. We'll be right back with your First Alert forecast and a look at your top stories. Ryan Yamamoto. This is The Minute. Investigators are looking into the cause of a lumberyard fire in Oakland and burned for hours last night at the Economy Lumber Warehouse. This is on High Street near 880. Neighbors were told to close their doors and windows because of concerns over air quality. No injuries reported. Workers of Alcatraz Island Ferry are on strike. It comes after a year-and-a-half negotiations. Almost 100 unionized ferry workers are fighting for better pay and workplace benefits. Alcatraz